Trauma and the Brain. What are you doing? Seriously, stop it. Please, just stop it, Jane found herself shouting at her teenage daughter, Betty, after an hour of trying to calmly reason with her. Betty had been hoarding food under her bed for months, and when Jane found the foul-smelling stash, Betty began to scream at her. Jane used a gentle tone to explain that the smell was not okay, that the food was rotten, that it was smelling up her room, and that the smell was lingering in the carpet. She brought garbage bags and carpet cleaner into Betty's room and offered to help her clean. To her increasing frustration, everything she said or did only heightened Betty's response. Instead of accepting her mother's help, Betty insulted her mother, turned on her siblings, threatened to harm herself, and eventually broke down in tears. Betty's hoarding and subsequent reaction to being discovered made no sense to Jane. They had plenty of food in the refrigerator. The pantry was fully stocked. Betty knew that. She had been living with her family since she was 3 years old. For 13 years, Betty had plenty to eat, a safe home, and a loving family. Jane could see the situation from a logical, rational perspective. Her request for Betty to just stop it is a reaction we often have as parents when our children do something that doesn't make sense. However, it isn't any more reasonable to ask our children to abandon an emotional reaction than it is for us to ask someone in a wheelchair to leave the wheelchair at the door. A person who uses a wheelchair does not cease to need the accommodation just because someone tells them to stop. A person who is having an involuntary reaction to trauma cannot just stop because someone tells them to. That's because trauma has ingrained itself into our children's brains and has shaped the way they interact with the world around them.
Trauma experiences leave a scar. Have you ever broken something and tried to put it back together? I am the oldest of 16 grandchildren on my mom's side. When my grandfather passed away 21 years ago, I was just about to get married. My aunts and uncles sorted through 90 years' worth of memories. Together, they gifted me my grandmother's china. The honor was not lost on me. I have gently wrapped and carried each delicate piece to the 7 homes I have lived in since, careful not to damage any of it. A few years ago, 2 of our children were roughhousing in the kitchen and bumped the shelf where I kept the teacups and saucers. One fell to the ground and shattered. I heard the crash, walked to the kitchen, and knelt to gather the broken pieces. "I'm so sorry, Mommy, I'll glue it," my son said, starting to cry. I shook my head. "It can't be glued. The damage is too bad." He tried to fix it, which was sweet, but it was never the same. The break had changed nearly everything about the tiny cup. Brains are the same way. Trauma experiences are stored inside the brain like tiny shards of broken china. We can mend them, but they cannot go back to exactly the way they were before the experience happened. They are changed. Simplifying the brain's complexity. When we first learned about trauma and its effect on the brain, we found ourselves overwhelmed. Thankfully, we worked with professionals who disentangled the complex information to make it clearer. We found that to appreciate the effects of childhood trauma on our children's brains, we must understand, in a simple way, a few key parts of the brain. We are parents who struggled for years to comprehend our children's behaviors at a surface level. It wasn't until we recognized that trauma changes the brain in a fundamental way that we gained the ability to address behaviors from a perspective of patience, understanding, and healing. Out of all the brain's complex and unique facets, the 3 most important for our purposes are the brainstem,